Welcome to the 3D Print Entrepreneur Podcast, hosted by Print That Thing, where we help you become a 3D print designer. I'm your host, Jaywall, and in today's episode, we'll be talking to Kevin from Product Design Online. Kevin is a designer, educator, and YouTuber who's eager to make CAD education accessible to the masses, to everyone. He has over 100,000 YouTube subscribers and runs a fantastic educational platform that teaches Fusion 360 to anyone who's interested. We had a great chat about his experience as an engineering student and the limited educational resources at the time. He also has some really great points about the industry and why he's focused his career on helping others learn design. Before we dive into the interview, let's get a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Print That Thing, an educational platform that helps you become a 3D print designer within 30 days. We provide easy to digest lessons that compound so you can learn fast. Sure, you can learn 3D print design on YouTube, but we teach a unique and flexible workflow not found anywhere else. You'll learn by doing, while creating 10 unique designs, giving you a strong foundation to get you 3D printing your own ideas. If you want to unleash your superpower of 3D print design, become a member at ptt.live for designs, courses, and community. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Today, we have one of my good buddies, Kevin, and he is with Product Design Online. Say what's up, Kevin.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Thanks for being here. For people who are just kind of getting to know you, obviously you have a very, very popular YouTube channel and many other things, but kind of tell people what you do, what your mission is, and kind of how you got into 3D printing in general.
Yeah. So I guess I am most known for teaching Fusion 360. That's probably what most people, if they are familiar with me, that's why. But my general mission is to make CAD education accessible. So I'll give you kind of a quick, short version of the story. So I was fortunate enough in my upbringing to learn different 3D modeling programs at a fairly young age compared to most people don't have access till college or later.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forwarding, I went to college for industrial design, and in my time there, we had to learn SolidWorks. And I had experience in Inventor and other similar programs in high school and prior. So switching to SolidWorks, once you got kind of used to the different interface or quirks or nuances, it wasn't a big deal, right? It was kind of like, okay, another parametric program.
Where are the buttons? Yeah,
exactly. But most of the other students had no prior experience. So it was a big kind of eye opener for them.
Mm-hmm.
And as the story goes, the first day of class, the professor kind of got up and said to everyone, hey, I don't actually know this program. You're going to have to learn on your own. You're going to have to learn on YouTube, right?
Oh my gosh.
It's funny saying that now because that is part of why I started posting on YouTube. But I also have to remind people that back then, this was like 2013. Obviously,
yeah.
I've been around, but there wasn't as much education content, especially in this realm, like 3D modeling, right?
Oh yeah, it was super early.
It was more like promo videos from like, SolidWorks or something. And I wouldn't say any education really, or if there was, it was very bad. So most kids felt very, left to fend for themselves. Like they just didn't know what to do, right?
Right.
So I kind of naturally became the class TA, the unofficial TA of the class, because to me it was like, okay, I would get the homework assignment done in 10 minutes, struggling for hours.
Yeah, so and you probably learn more too teaching them, because they say when you teach, you learn twice.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think for me, it really reinforced what I did know at the time and where the gaps were for myself, like what I had to take my skill to the next level. So I should clarify, like I was by no means like a CAD pro at the time, but I had enough experience to like
had more than everybody else in the class.
Right.
Yeah.
So around that same time was when I first got introduced to 3D printing in school. So I think my freshman year of college, we had one or maybe two MakerBots. And at the time, our design building was kind of going this transition phase where they were going to remodel a lot of it. And so this 3D printing lab, which it's hard to call it a lab with only one or two machines, but it was tucked away in this kind of hidden corner room on the fourth floor where no student even knew.
Dusty.
The only reason I heard about it is because my friend happened to work as a lab assistant in the building, and somehow, he knew about it because of that, and it trickled down to me.
Wow.
So I went to hang out with him in there, and I was just blown away. Like, whoa, this is amazing, right?
It's like it's just sitting here.
Yeah. So I will never forget the very first thing that I printed was a skull, like this random skull model I found online. The most unnecessary, unfunctional, object. Like something I rarely would ever print now. Like I'm more for the utilitarian, like 3D prints.
Me too now.
But it was so fascinating. I still remember, like, because I think we scaled it down so it only took like an hour, hour and a half. And I remember I hung out there like the whole time because I was just so eager to pop that off the build plate when it got done. Right? And and seeing other people still today like go through that first like realization, the first time they see that 3D printer complete something, kind of reminds me of that like moment I had myself.
And even more so whenever when it's their design,
Yeah, right.
Even crazier.
And that's kind of part of my, I think both of our goals, right? You with Blender, you with Fusion, but helping people have that ability and freedom to actually take what's in their head and it ends up there versus, Thingiverse or Things or any of the 3D sites where you're just taking someone else's creation.
Right. Take what you get.
But let me finish off this story kind of in a fast way. So throughout my time in school, I ended up working in 2 other actual 3D print labs. One of which was just a number of maker bots. I think we had like 18. And then at some point,
wow, that sounds like a lot of headache.
Yeah. Well, we quickly realized that ourselves and transitioned the whole space to Ultimakers, which ended up being really well. The other 3D print lab I worked in was more of an engineering and design one on kind of the scale of like actual like creating real products. And so we had access to like legitimate commercial, Stratasys, HP, like really high-end machines.
Whoa.
But we also still had some of the cheap ones for like quick prototype.
Right.
And so between those 2 resources and then still the printers in our design building, at that time, I think we had like Zortrax or something. They had moved on to MakerBot 2. I had access to pretty much anything you could hope for from a 3D printing realm, even some, SLA machines. Like I think we had the earlier Form Labs and a few other.
You had it all. You had it all, Kevin.
So I was very fortunate that I was kind of at the right place at the right time when 3D printing was really getting popular. Like that was kind of like at the peak of MakerBot before they're kind of, drastic crash.
And you're in Seattle, right? For anyone listening, or was this the school in Seattle too?
No, so I went to school, University of Illinois in Champaign.
Illinois. Okay.
And I do live in the greater Seattle area now.
Cool.
But yeah, this was all in Champaign. But anyway, so yeah, fast forward, I after school had been kind of involved in different maker spaces and stuff. I was living in Chicago at the time. And that's when I kind of had that urge to like teach Fusion again. I missed doing that because I also taught it in some school labs and different things throughout my time on campus. And I guess I also taught SolidWorks. So somewhere in there's this transition of starting to use Fusion more, which is a story for another day. But I then realized like my biggest frustration was with these in-person classes, it didn't scale. There was always more people that wanted to learn that could learn from we would always cap like classes at like 10, 15 people, and you'd still have people that didn't show up last minute, lots of frustrations. So at the time I was kind of looking to step away from the makerspace I was involved in at the time, just for like other personal reasons. I decided like, hey, maybe I should just start posting on YouTube just to see if anyone even wants to see this online. Right.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
And, there was definitely some other channels out there, but I knew that they didn't have experience or a background in CAD. And so a lot of the stuff they were actually teaching was not really what I would consider a best practice or even what you should be doing. And even Fusion aside, just parametric programs in general.
They're just building bad habits.
Exactly. Yeah. And so part of my mission and kind of where I started was with the intent that making CAD education accessible isn't just about like helping you learn it. It's making sure you're able to learn kind of the professional level skills, these actual best practices or core concepts without having to go to college.
Right.
So
And
to kind of
paying
wrap up,
50 grand plus.
so I tell people that because to kind of full circle here and wrap up my story, I tell people like even if you go back to college or go to college for something like this, you may not learn it anyway, right?
Yeah,
No
totally.
professor that says he doesn't know it. So you'll end up on one of our YouTube channels.
Yeah, totally. No, I went to film school and it was pretty much the same story. It's like these teachers don't even make movies. Like they don't like when they haven't made a movie in 15, 20 years. Like they don't know. But we learned everything just by jumping on the sets on the weekend, just getting our hands dirty. So I'm right there with you. If you want to be an artist, you don't technically have to go to school. It's gotta
Right.
want to do it bad enough.
Yeah, no, totally.
So what is your like kind of your course creation process or just your process in general when creating your lessons or your, you know, how do you come up with your ideas or anything like that?
Yeah, so there's, I guess, kind of two distinct subsets. And I'll say that so I run a YouTube channel and then I have like more in-depth courses on my website.
Mm-hmm.
I say there's different subsets because the overall process is the same, but with the idea or the start for each thing differs because YouTube, I spend more time looking at data and like what are people searching for, right?
Right.
A lot of that is like very niche workflows or troubleshooting based stuff. Whereas on my website, the courses are more geared towards like, hey, you can go from like knowing nothing of Fusion to getting to pretty intermediate or advanced, concepts in a professional level, like where you can go and actually use these skills in a job somewhere or to start your own business or whatever it may be.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the YouTuber viewers, maybe not everyone, but it seems like a lot of beginners. I always think of like a younger crowd too, but that's cool. I want to take your classes too. I want to learn more Fusion. I've never really dove into Fusion, but I've watched a few of your classes. I watched your threading class, and that was really helpful just to like kind of see how Fusion handles everything. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like that looks really powerful.
So I the only thing I'll say to that is I think a lot of people, this is something that I'm still trying to figure out how to educate people on.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people that are new to the world of 3D modeling in general, they don't realize that there's a big difference in mesh modelers like Blender and so on, and parametric modelers like Fusion and SolidWorks and Inventor and so on. And there is a very valuable need or will to have the skill set in both, I think.
I
But
agree.
it depends on the person. I think some people, if they have a very specific idea in mind, it's best for them to go one way or the other. But I find a lot of people struggle to understand that. And I've even encountered a number of people who were starting to learn Fusion when really they should have been on Blender.
Yeah.
Right? And,
I wonder that too. Yeah, when I jump into Fusion, because I do want to like within the next year or so, like if it'll be just like click or if I'll be like, because I'm so used to kind of the free kind of art form with the Blender side of things.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say to that is I always tell people like feel like you at least have a solid foundation in one before you try learning the other.
That's good advice.
If you try to learn both at the same time, you're really gonna have it rough because it is a different mental model and mind shift. And so when you go into that program, you have to keep that in mind and remember which kind of methodologies you're working with, right?
That's good advice. That's great. What do you think? So you've been in the printing industry for pretty like almost 5, 6, 7 years. What is your favorite part of the industry? Like tech, the design, the community, like what kind of is strongest to you?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because there's so many different layers to it. For me, I think one is that there's a lot of opportunity in so many different industries. I think to a lot of like people who are just getting started with 3D printing, most people don't recognize how long it has been used in the commercial realm. They think 3D printing was invented, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the first 3D printers were out like 40 years ago. I think the first like patent was issued.
Yeah.
A lot of people think like the FDM or FFF machines were first, but I believe it was actually the SLA machine,
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think the earliest time I've seen was like 87 when I was born, like 33 years ago.
Yeah. And so I think, and a lot of that was the cost, right? Like a lot of things became consumerized with the ability to make it affordable for consumers. But to me, I think that's still the most exciting aspect, because there is just so much going on behind the scenes that if you don't take the time to look for it or to really connect with different industries or people, you probably will never even hear about it. You know, we start to see a lot more of like, 3D printed concrete houses, or like kind of like the viral type things.
Yeah,
But
the bridges. Yeah.
There's even more stuff going on that doesn't get shared because either companies don't want it to be shared,
right.
or because of other things, right? And so that to me is most exciting, because I think a lot of people that get into it for hobbyist reasons don't realize how much opportunity there is to either start a business around it or to get involved with a company that's already doing it, you know?
Yeah. That's kind of what I want to help with, is just anyone who's listening out there, like, who wants to make 3D design or 3D print design more or less their career. Like, you can do that. Like, I feel like coming from me, I was like, I don't see a lot of people doing it or even talking about it, but even just doing this podcast, just meeting different designers and people like you that are like, they're doing it, and it's just, I just wanted to be able to share this kind of like dream with everybody so that they know they can do it. You just got to start learning and start making your designs. Well, where do you think the actual, like, what do you think the future will be? Like, what do you think it will be like in 5 years? Or you can go as far into the future as you want, but like, what do you hope the future of 3D printing is like?
I think, yeah, that's another great question. I think it's again kind of split. Like, you have the hobbyist sector, and then you have like this commercial sector. I think in the commercial sector, we're going to continue seeing what's kind of been happening in the last couple years, especially like advancements in like metal and other materials that really push the boundaries of the end result. And I think a lot of that revolves around like actual production manufacturing. In the commercial sector, a lot of 3D printing is used for real production, but a lot of it is also still used just for prototyping or other purposes. And so I think there's a lot of stuff that's kind of coming together between technologies like generative design and software and cloud computing getting better, right? So to me, the most exciting part there is the realization that in another couple of years, even some of that stuff will be in places where even a few years ago that could never happen because the technology wasn't, there. It didn't catch up with it.
Whoa. Yep.
On the
Either
flip
adapt or
side,
die.
yeah, exactly. On the flip side, I think, the hobbyist sector, I really don't think, a lot of people think, in a couple of years, everyone's going to have one in their garage and they're going to print the part, I don't think that'll happen
Yeah.
within the next 5, even 10 years. To me, it really all comes back to the materials and the actual, final output. I do think at some point in our life, we'll be able to go to an AutoZone and they may print a custom part instead of having all these different, things in stock right
Or have to
there.
wait for it to ship a few days. Yeah.
Right. They may
Yeah.
say, "Hey, come back in 4 hours." It'll be
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah.
I think that there's definitely potential there, but again, there's a lot of variables and things we're waiting to like catch up technology and material wise. Um, I think from a hobbyist standpoint, the last thing is that I think more and more people will get into it for different reasons other than just like the final output of a 3D printed plastic object.
Yeah. It's
And
like a problem solving machine.
yeah, and I think that's the one thing me and you align with well, is this idea of 3D printing does not have to be the final output. Like, this could be your way to iterate on the design. It could be a way to maybe you print one little piece and then everything else is made in other materials or traditional methods. Or there's so many different
I've seen
ways.
people a lot of doing with furniture. Like, they'll print the pieces and then they'll run dowel rods and stuff to make little chairs and tables.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where in the next couple of years, especially, that sector will grow a lot. We'll start to see more companies and ideas that, revolve around the idea of like, hey, you can purchase this kit from us. We'll send you the nuts and bolts and a few other things that shouldn't be 3D printed. You'll print out a couple pieces and maybe you'll pick up some pieces from a local hardware store. and you'll put it together, right? So it's kind of this hybrid of like, you know, there's still value in you getting something from the company, but you're able to kind of put your creative influence on it as well.
Yeah. I feel like I've seen things with IKEA. They're kind of dabbling in some 3D printed parts. So it seems like they're kind of experimenting with that type of idea to some degree.
Yeah, one of my favorite, let's see if I can look this up. I think it's called Edelkrone.
Say it again.
Edelkrone, I think is what it's called. Edelkrone.
Okay.
They make high-end camera equipment, but they like a few years ago made a few products where you would buy a kit and you would 3D print the parts. They would send you the STL files, you 3D print them, and then a few days later, right, your nuts and bolts arrive and you piece it together.
That's
and like
cool.
bearings and stuff that you wouldn't want printed.
I did that with 360 cameras because I've come from a film background. So that's actually what got me into 3D was making camera gear and stuff. So I love that.
Yeah, I love that example because traditionally a lot of that equipment is insanely priced, right?
Oh, it's a very expensive hobby. Yeah.
$1,200 like this camera jig just to make the camera slide, right?
Yeah.
But now if you make it for $100 because you're 3D printing components, like that's huge. It's all about accessibility.
Yep. They got to adapt. So where do you go? And just for any people listening, like I know you're very busy creating courses and building platforms and everything. It's a lot to do, but where is there any artist that you are inspired by or places you go to get inspiration? I know you said you did woodworking before when we talked once before, right? So do you feel like you get a lot of inspiration from woodworking or kind of go off of that?
Yeah. So I don't think of any off the top of my head, like 3D printing specific designers. I think there's a few kind of famous designers that I've always admired and got influenced by. The classics like Dieter Rams and Charles and Ray Eames, like all the famous chairs and things like that.
I'll have to look it up.
I think probably the one that's less common, one of my favorites is Karim Rashid, who's a designer. I think he's based out of New York now, but he's probably one of the most global designers I've seen from like an industrial design standpoint. He does anything from furniture to mass like products like the Method, like soap bottles.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
High-end hotels. Like he dabbles in like everything.
He's just a designer, period. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the reason I've always resonated with him is because he's always followed, the idealistic utilitarian approach of like form follows function.
I like that.
But I think he, more than any other modern designers, has pushed that to where beauty and kind of the sex appeal of it is still a huge part of the final design. And like, even like if you look at the Method bottles, I think that's probably the most common example I can think of that everyone would probably have seen at some point.
Oh yeah.
Like they sold more of the soap bottles than anything else, not because of the soap being anything special, but because of the appearance of the bottle.
Yeah. The design, it comes back to the design.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I like that type of stuff excites me because I think a lot of people who are new to 3D modeling or 3D design or even just 3D printing or things in general, they forget how big of a role that the design actually plays, a part of it, right? Whether or not some people adopt that product or actually use it.
Yeah. And next time anyone listening walking through the store, the hardware store, just know that some designer out there somewhere made every single thing you're looking at in the entire store. And that's crazy.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to frame it.
It's like, dang. So there's definitely room for more designers, guys and girls out there. So what in the long term, like, is there anything like crazy or cool or something like you mentioned, furniture and stuff? Would you ever be interested in like 3D printing furniture or 3D printing like cars or anything like insane? Like, is there anything in your pipeline or your future you would like to do like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had,
like, if you had no budget, you just had in like a huge printer in your garage or something.
Well, actually, I'll frame it in a realistic way because I think it's not about if I have the time. It's about making, changing priorities. I think when I get to a point where, right now, I'm too dedicated to building up this platform,
right? And it takes a long time. Yeah,
a way to learn Fusion. I think when that gets to a point where I feel like And actually the challenge with that is Fusion, like any software, is always updating. So there's,
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You're always one step behind, one step forward.
But especially with Fusion, because it gets updated every month,
Oh
right?
my gosh. Yeah. I think Blender like updates every month too. It's just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. But I think once there's enough courses that I feel like people have enough depth to go through. Like they can really get this like collective, like, oh my God, I went from nothing to like, I can 3D model essentially anything because I know how to approach it now.
Yeah. You know how to think. Yeah. You're teaching them, you're just building them with skills.
Yeah. I think then I'll feel comfortable shifting more of my time and focus into like a project like that. I mean, I think if I could pick something
Yeah. What
today,
would it, yeah. House design or like,
it would probably be 3D printing furniture or something on a large scale with the intent that I'm not just 3D printing like giant plastic objects. I'm using it as one method with woodworking or concrete or other materials to push the boundaries of what was capable before.
yeah.
I think like to me, that's where 3D printing is so powerful. A lot of people forget that you can come up with an object that probably couldn't be created in any other or most other manufacturing methods. But on the flip side, I'm not as keen to like, oh, I'm going to 3D print this bench that would have been better off in wood.
Right. Right. Just using what needs, what it's calling for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I dig that. What advice would you have for anyone starting out, whether they want to be like start doing tutorials or if they wanted to did their own platform and train people, or if they wanted to just start designing in general? Like what advice would you wish somebody would have gave to you when you were starting out?
I think the number one thing, regardless of whether it's trying to do tutorials or start like a 3D printing business or anything, is to start small and with a niche. And the reason always falls back onto that helps you remain hyper focused on what you're actually trying to do, what problem you're trying to solve. And so that's why I tell people like today I could be teaching SolidWorks and Fusion and
Blender and
right,
yeah,
10 other but
yeah,
at the end of the day, everything would be so just, barely scratching the surface. It wouldn't really give value to anyone. I already feel like I can't keep up with Fusion, just teaching that in general.
I know
So
that. I know that. Yeah,
doing, multiple things.
definitely.
But I think no matter what you do, if you keep that in mind, like start small and understanding that, you can have a 5-year, 10-year plan of how you would expand to other, categories or subsets. But even if it's just a 3D printing business, like start by making, camera equipment or a specific niche where you can build a customer base. And then once you get the revenue flowing and you get money or other resources, you can easily expand into others and you'll have other experience to lean on.
Right, right. So have you ever worked with clients or do you ever take on clients like, or did you in the past or anything like that? Or would you recommend someone taking on like design prototype clients?
Yeah. So I still do client work. So most of my 3D printing kind of client work is more prototyping. So a lot of it is helping customers either get stuff ready for manufacturing or for getting like patents or other kind of like, they kind of have the idea and things are at a certain point, right?
Right.
Like finalized. They need the help getting, the home stretch.
Gotcha.
I like to say. I don't typically work with someone if like they just came to me and said, "Hey, I have this idea. I think it's a cool invention. Like, can you help me make it?" Right.
Right, right.
And there's kind of two reasons for that. One is typically that idea is either not truly vetted yet and it's not worth my time. Or two, if someone hasn't invested in that much time themselves, it's usually not going to go very far.
Right. They're like, I want you to do it though. It'll be, yeah,
Right.
like,
At least in my experience. So the lesson I would tell people there is if anyone ever tells you or asks you to help for equity or something else, you should probably be running in the other direction.
Yeah, I had a buddy of mine call me from LA, and he's like, dude, I got this great idea, it's gonna be great. And like, I know he knows a lot of people and is very connected. And then he's like, but we don't want to spend that much or really anything up front, but we'll totally have it on the back end. And I was like, I'm good. Yeah. Maybe, yeah, I might not be your guy. Yeah, I'm kind of a more 50 up front, like let's get it on the table and go.
Yeah, no, I think that's a lesson that all entrepreneurs go through at some point.
Definitely.
They have to have that moment. I think everyone goes through at least one experience where they accept that anyway because the conscious tells them, what if it turns out well?
Right. And it totally could.
But I think most people get burned and they realize, okay, moving forward, this is not, viable or sustainable for long term.
Definitely. Yeah. If you remember anything from today, be careful. What about, let's see. Well, so if someone wants to learn Fusion or just, work with you, what's the best way for them to find you or get in contact with you or see what you're doing or take your classes and stuff like that?
Yeah. So all of my classes are on productdesignonline.com. So I have what I refer to as the PDO Academy for short. So if you sign up for the Academy, you get access to all the courses, not just like one-off courses. There's also, I have a newer community space. That was one of the things that I learned early in my kind of teaching online was one of the biggest disconnects or reasons people struggle with online learning is they don't have that ability to kind of raise their hand or lean on support or things like that. And beautiful. I've always been very big on even my YouTube tutorials. For the first year and a half, I responded to every single comment.
Yeah, that's great.
That person should be able to get unstuck or get help, whenever they need it. Yeah, now, obviously definitely. That doesn't scale.
Right. You have hundreds of thousands of, probably tons of comments every day.
At the time I finally accepted that, I was probably spending an hour or 2 hours every day trying to respond and keep up. And it was not worth it.
You would have to hire someone almost.
Yeah. And I also realized that I started repeating myself a lot. And so by building out this community space, as well as more documentation and kind of troubleshooting articles,
that's smart.
My goal is to help get people unblocked as soon as possible, but to make sure that when they go through that process of getting past that kind of learning roadblock, they actually recognize themselves, how they got there. So that way, if they get, in front of another kind of learning hurdle, they have that willpower to kind of do it themselves.
That's awesome.
I think that's what I found a lot of online courses do wrong is the intent of they either one have no support at all, you're basically just you're on your own,
right?
Or they solve every single problem and you make it actually harder for that person to learn because you're not actually letting them go through that process.
Right, the learning process. Yes, definitely. That's great.
But to answer the rest of your question, so pretty much can contact me through the website for any client work. Lately, I've been busy enough. I'm not taking on much just because I have too much on my plate as it is.
Me either.
But yeah, I'm sure you know how that is. But
yes.
I think, the other thing that I'll point out is part of my mission to making CAD education accessible. On one hand, I have to have a viable business and have to charge, for stuff.
Right. But your time, your talent, your skills.
I'm also very adamant about giving away as much resources as possible. So those who maybe aren't in a stance that they can afford even a single course can still learn at least some of the core entry-level concepts.
That's beautiful.
So on my YouTube channel, I have a lot of training stuff that you can really go through from nothing and have at least a solid foundation of Fusion. I will say one disclaimer, a lot of the older videos are the old Fusion 360 interface. So some people find that to be a struggle. I've actually found, to my surprise, a lot of folks actually comment the fact that although it's a struggle at first, it actually helps them because, again,
it's like a little quiz.
That little learning hurdle, they have to make sure they can figure it out themselves. And so not only do those concepts stick and get retained better, but a lot of times people end up digging further and learning something that maybe I didn't show in that video.
That's a great, and it's, I mean, it literally is almost impossible to keep up with the software, and it'll probably just keep getting faster and faster as time continues and technology advances. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, at some point we'll probably have platforms that take our jobs and teach the
hopefully
software.
Yeah, well, let's let the robots do all the work. That's what sometimes when I'm printing things, I'm like, all right, I'm working technically, like the robots are all doing. I've set them all up to go. Yeah. Apparently, like in the future, I mean, well, already we're getting AI and stuff into our design softwares, but I think that's going to be cool. I know a lot of people are scared of AI, but I think it's going to be cool when like us as designers, we're like creative, but we're also using super powerful AI plugins that can make us do things even better than we thought we could think of on our own. I'm kind of excited for that phase.
Yeah, I think the coolest opportunity there is the fact, I'll agree with you that a lot of people have that fear of
the robots,
the robots taking over.
Yeah.
I think what most people often don't see or forget is that it's actually about the numbers or how much can be generated, right? And it all comes back to time. So like with Fusion 360 right now, if you use the generative design workspace, you can have it generate 200 ideas in 30 minutes, right?
Oh my gosh.
If you actually spent the time to do that, that would have taken you 6 months, probably, maybe even longer. And so it really comes back to the designer actually has more power to get from point A to point B, and they're going to get much further than they ever would, in a shorter amount of time. So I think that's
great.
Exciting from an AI standpoint.
Definitely. All right, I want to play a game with you. So I'm just going to run like 2 words, like a word association, and then just kind of pick one, or you can pass. Ready?
Okay.
Yeah. So PLA or TPU?
PLA.
Okay. FDM or SLA?
FDM.
3D scan or 3D model?
3D model.
Supports or no supports?
Supports.
STL or OBJ or other?
I'll say other.
Okay. What's the other? What is that?
I would say step file.
Okay. Yeah. Step file, of course. Precision modeling or sculpting?
Precision, definitely.
Prusa slicer or Cura slicer?
I want to say both, but if I really had to choose, I would say Cura.
Okay, yeah. My Mini Factory or Colts 3D?
I honestly don't use either, so
pass.
I'll pass.
Shapeways or 3D hubs? I know the answer to this.
I'll say
maybe 3D hubs. Yeah. Practical design or decorative design?
Definitely practical.
Yeah. Digital download or print on demand?
What do you mean by
like? Would you would you rather like sell a digital product or like step files or STLs, or would you rather print that product on demand?
Oh, gotcha. Definitely the STL, digital download.
And sell a product or take on a client?
Sell a product.
Yeah, that's great. That's all the questions I have for today. Thanks for coming on the show with us today. I appreciate your feedback and your advice and just your good vibes.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, thanks again. Everybody, make sure you go check out his website. And is it productdesignonline.com, or I feel like I typed in pdo.com or something. Is that what, did I do that?
No. I would love to buy that domain, but it's like right now. So.
Yeah, in time. So Product Design Online.
Yeah, productdesignonline.com.
Yep. Cool. Thank you all so much for listening with us today. And again, thanks to Kevin for joining me. If you're interested in jumping into Fusion 360, check out productdesignonline.com. Kevin's got a fantastic platform of designers learning new stuff all the time. Be sure to check in next week. We'll be talking to Pierre from Colts3D.com to discuss the early days of building the platform and a few tips and tricks on posting there in 2021. While you're waiting, remember you can get a Print That Thing membership over at ptt.live so you can start 3D printing your own ideas. I'm Jaywall, and as always, keep creating.